Tarai, what would make this especially impactful for you today?
I'm struggling with timing. I have a lot of timing issues. Like I can do practice tests untimed and get a good, decent score, but when it comes to timing, I hardly get any right.
Okay. Well, is timing on all sections or any particular sections in particular?
All sections.
Okay. Okay, sure. So maybe it would be helpful for you if we walk through some timing strategies for each section then.
Okay.
So on games, what's your approach like with regard to pacing?
I tried to, well, first off, I'll start by saying I took the Kaplan course. So they taught us to do like 8 minutes, and then 9 minutes, 9 minutes, 9 minutes for the other three games. So I try to do like the first game 8 minutes, and then the other three games 9 minutes. So that like try to do like 4 minutes to diagram, and then the remaining time for the questions.
Okay. Well, first off, I'll tell you a little bit of what I think of that approach of theirs. I don't love it. I think it's simple, so it's
Hmm.
easy to remember 8,
Hmm.
9, 9, 9. But those differences to me are relatively insignificant.
Okay.
Games vary in difficulty much more than just by a minute or two.
Okay.
So there are some games you might want to aim to do in 6 or 7 minutes, and other games that might take 11 or 12 minutes, and that's totally reasonable given just how difficult that game is. I
Okay.
also wouldn't even time individual games at all, period.
All
It's
right.
okay to note how long it's taking you, but I wouldn't stress yourself to time an individual game. Instead, I would just work on improving my efficiency overall. And here's how I would do that. There's two big things I think about. One is maximizing your use of previous drawn hypothetical scenarios.
Okay.
So any diagram you draw over the course of the game could help you later in that same game. The other thing I would suggest is to do the questions in an order that works for you within a game. So not just to work through them in the order given, but instead do the orientation question first,
Hmm.
then the local questions, then the global ones. And this will actually allow you to approach the global questions when you have the greatest number of hypothetical scenarios to draw upon to help you solve it more efficiently.
Okay. I'm sorry, when you say like local questions, are those the if questions where you redraw the diagrams?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that's
everything I'm saying to you, how does that sound so far?
it sounds good. That's actually the order I typically go in. I do the orientation questions, and then I do the if questions and redraw the diagrams, and then I go and do like the must feature question. The must be
Fantastic. So then
possible
the only thing I
question.
would add then is maybe using the previous work more, or do you feel like you're
Okay.
using it as much as you can?
When you say that, when I think about it, I probably do like redraw every diagram, whereas I probably could look at a previous diagram that I've drawn and make a deduction from that one instead of wasting time redrawing another diagram.
Yeah, you might be able to. And even that correct answer to the orientation question is another valid scenario. So like if number one was C, and C is a scenario that you know is in compliance with all the rules, then later if they ask you something about what in general must be true, but you didn't see that happen in your correct answer to the orientation question, then you know it's not a universal must and you can eliminate it.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Any other things we could talk about on games that you think might be helpful for you?
Um, no, I don't think so. Um, I kind of wrote a list of things down here on the side.
Okay, sure,
So,
sure.
um, I had bought your day by day study plan, and I noticed a slight increase, but I don't know. I think maybe I just need to focus more on question types.
Yeah, so that's one of the stages of studying is just familiarizing yourself with all the various question types and being proficient in knowing what they're asking you to do. So you might, starting off, do a bunch of ordering games, then grouping games, then combination games. And then for logical reasoning, obviously there's more than a dozen types of that. So you could do necessary assumption, strengthen, weaken, and so on to drill by type, just to know exactly what they're asking you to do.
Yeah.
But once you've finished familiarizing yourself, then it's time to move into the next stage, which is individual timed sections to work on your pacing. And that's where the question of timing came in.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I am because taking the course, I know I'm pretty familiar with the question types. It's just, I don't know, it's just timing overall is an issue. With the logical reasoning, I do the time 35-minute sections, but I still have difficulty when it comes to timing versus non-timing.
So what do you think, do you have any particular pacing strategy that you use for logical reasoning?
No, I don't. If you have one, that would be awesome.
Sure. So there is a general order of difficulty on logical reasoning, just like there is on the other sections. And it's even more pronounced in reasoning because the questions are bite-sized. So you can easily see them ramping up in difficulty along the way.
Okay.
So one technique that has worked for a lot of my students is to do the easier, earlier questions much more quickly to build up a time bank to apply to the tougher questions later in the section. So
Okay.
you might aim to do the first 10 questions in 10 to 12 minutes, which is around in a minute per question, maybe slightly more. And then you speed up on those so that you can slow down for the tougher ones later that might actually require closer to 2 minutes per question. And then
Okay.
along the way, you might flag anywhere from 3 to 5 difficult questions to skip and come back to at the end if you have time.
Okay. Reading comp, I'm okay with reading comp pretty much. I don't struggle too much with that.
Do you do the questions in any particular order?
No, I don't.
No? Just the
No.
order given?
Yeah, I just pretty much do them in the order given.
So you might consider changing that up a bit too if timing's an issue. Because again, like on the LSAT, because everything is worth the same, it makes sense to do the easier questions before the harder ones.
Okay.
And to do more, to do easier questions earlier, and at the same time, build your understanding of the situation as you go so that you can tackle the toughest questions when you have the most information. So like with games, we save the toughest global questions for last and use all the hypothetical scenarios. In reading comp, we do something similar, but opposite. The difference in reading comp is general first, like main idea, primary purpose, and passage organization. Do those first. Then do the detail-oriented questions. Then do the general, more inferential questions that come last, because those are the toughest. But by that point, you've built your understanding of the passage along the way as you solve the questions. So you're in a better position to handle the toughest questions at the end.
Okay, that makes sense.
Do you get what I mean by inferential and local and main idea and those? Okay.
Yep, I understand.
Okay, and same thing with regard to pacing too. I wouldn't do 8, 9, 9, 9. Again, they vary in difficulty. So just do what comes naturally. But if it's on a topic that you're pretty comfortable with, try to push yourself a little bit so that you'll save up the time for the toughest passages that you don't really love the topic quite as much.
So what are good time intervals? Or you're saying don't do the time intervals at all? Is that not a good approach?
I'm saying not to do intervals because I wouldn't time individual passages or individual games. I wouldn't hold yourself to any benchmark because they vary in difficulty a lot and it's hard to know precisely how much they vary. And also because difficulty can be somewhat personal as well, especially in reading comp, where your level of comfort with the topic could vary a lot from someone else's level of comfort. Like if you like humanities and someone else likes science or vice versa, that could impact how you do relative to them. When are you taking the LSAT, by the way?
I was looking to take it in January, but based off my scores, I think I might push it back to February to get some extra time. Just really struggling, like I said, with timing. I've been using your day-to-day study schedule. I study at least, because I work full-time, so I study like 2.5 hours a day. After work, I go to the library, study, and then I try to study on Saturdays, at least 2 or 3 hours on Saturdays.
Good. So you're fitting in the time where you can.
Yeah. But
Are you planning to apply this cycle?
I wanted to apply this coming fall.
Yeah, well, January or February, you still can. Schools are taking scores much later than they used to. So it's possible. It's possible. I'd say January is better than February.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to push it past February, I would consider applying the following cycle instead so that you can apply at the beginning.
Okay.
I know you might not love that idea, but
No.
the biggest difference is that there's more scholarship money available when you apply earlier.
Oh, okay. That would make sense.
And that's important, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely an important factor to consider, but it's worth applying later if you could get even a single point more on the LSAT. So you could just say, I'm going to apply later, but I'm going to study enough on the LSAT to make it worth the delay to get that higher score. Because they do actually waitlist more applicants than ever before because they want to see who else is going to come along. And that person who comes along might be you with the higher score. And they'll say, you know what, worth waiting for. We got the higher number. We can let her in. She'll raise our medians or whatever it may be.
Okay. I do have a question. How do you avoid burnout? Like I don't study on Fridays and I don't study on Sundays, but sometimes I feel like I'm still reaching my saturation point where I'm just getting burnt out.
Yeah. It's basically just recognizing whatever your point is. And then over time, moderating yourself so that you stop before you hit that wall. And so you said 2-3 hours. That's a reasonable amount of time. I wouldn't say that's too much. Just make sure you're taking breaks.
Okay. Maybe that's what I'm not doing, taking breaks.
There's an app called the Forest app.
Okay.
Forest like trees. And it uses something called the Pomodoro technique, which is periods of work followed by break periods. And it basically gives you a good rhythm so that you're taking breaks frequently, and they're scheduled so that you don't like check your email now because you know that you have your next email break in 25 minutes. So you always know a break is coming, but it gives you some discipline and accountability as well.
All right, I'll definitely download that and utilize that to help.
Awesome, Tarai. Any other questions for today?
I don't think so. I'm going to check into your premium or supreme class, see which one I can afford, and be honest.
Awesome. Yeah, sure. And if you have any questions about either, just let me know.
Okay, will do.
Well, I'm really glad we connected, and I hope to have you in the course sometime soon. What would you say is the biggest impact you got from our call today?
I just want to say you taking the time out and breaking down everything for me. The Forest app, like you said, to help me prevent burnout, and then going over just different techniques like reading comp and stuff really helped me. So I'll put that into practice going forward.
Awesome. Fantastic, Tarai. Well, again, I'm glad we connected. Please keep in touch, and I'll hope to see you in the course soon.
Okay, thank you. Will do.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.